for carpenters. I was basically a bit of problem kid, but yeah, that's why parents decided for me where to send me. And there I learned a lot about mechanics and about how things work, how to draw blueprints, and that actually gave me quite a lot of good background and inspiration to do what I'm doing now. Even though back then I didn't like it so much. And then I went to university. I started my course in computer science and also electronics, and ended up with like half a PhD in computer science. I had to choose between the commercial and the academic worlds. I chose the commercial one, and that's where I am now. Well, I don't have a first yet, but I built parts for them, and I might get one in the future. And like I said before, tinkering, I think it's my second nature. So where did they get the idea to start working on the tail in the first place? I was literally bored and I was sitting on the toilet, and I started wondering about, like how this can be done? How could I design a tail? Because I was working on medical imaging in the past, and I saw plenty of CT scans of pets, and I was always extremely inspired with how they can move their tails, how they can walk, and how everything works on the mechanical level or biomechanical level. So I started wondering how this could be replicated, really. And then there's also a really nice group on Telegram called the Electric Fursuits, where lots of makers meet and they talk about their projects and support each other. And there I also got quite a bit of inspiration to start working on this project. And I also got a lot of support from my followers on Twitter and from my friends there. So once I started working on that and I was seeing some initial success, I decided that I want to make this more of a commercial project, or I don't want to just make it for myself and forget about it, but I want to make it something that's sustainable and that I can share with others. So one of the first goals was to make this thing really affordable, and to perhaps even have like two different versions. One would be the DIY version, and the other one would be like the deluxe, which comes pre-assembled. And then it would have to be less than $100 in parts. And then the parts should be also easily available if you want to do it yourself, right? Then the other assumption was that I want to make it in such a way that ideally this could be mass-produced, even though this will be never really the case because I don't think there's such a market for those tails. But still, building or designing it with this in mind means that it's actually not overly complicated, and it does the right job, and it's simple. And it's well engineered, basically. And then finally, that it's easy to build. So it will require a 3D printer, or if you don't have a 3D printer, you can even do it by cutting plywood. It's actually possible. And then it also requires Arduino for the DIY version or custom electronics that I'll be later selling. And the assembly time, if you're really good, it's less than 1 hour, but it's actually after building like 5 or 6 of those tails, I still struggle to keep it within this time, but it's possible with the right amount of repetition. So what does it mean that it has to be affordable more in detail? That it means basically that the number of components is not crazy big, and then they are not very expensive, but also the later assumptions, they mean that it has to be solid, right? So it's all about finding a good balance between what's not too expensive and what also doesn't fall apart. So the required parts for this are standard servos, hydraulic hose, steel wire or nylon wire, and then Arduino, battery, like 2-cell lithium-ion battery, switching regulator, some joystick, and all that in total is less than $100. And of course, the mechanical parts like those vertebrae, either printed or made from plywood. Then what does it mean that it can be mass produced? It means that all the components can be resin or injection molded. That's faster than 3D printing, and it's also cheaper on large scale. Then this is probably a lot of hassle to get this started ever. I mean, injection molding, because that's an extremely expensive process to start. But normal molding from resin, that's actually doable. And yeah, also mass produced means that there are not too many parts. It has to be really kept simple. One more thing, here no hinges, it's just a flexible hose. That's one of the landmark features of this design compared to some other designs I saw. It's very simple, really. There are almost no moving parts because it's all a flexible car, and I'll talk about this a bit later. So when it comes to easy to build, in the DIY version, it's Arduino, and this features one of the first prototypes. You see it's a bit of a mess. And now something a bit more interesting, that's my adventures based, or the project history, from the first idea and the prototype to how it is now. This is one thing, a really useful thing I learned from a good friend of mine, Hayu, who once told me that I shouldn't get rid of my old works, even if I don't like them. Like when I was learning to draw, I was like, oh, I so much dislike those drawings, I just want to get rid of them. But he was like, no, don't do that. Back then I didn't listen, but and then I really would regret that. But with this project, I decided to keep those designs. And you see that this idea, it's really funny. Like I had this idea to have so many like springs and complicated joints and so many holes for the control for the pulleys or buttons. It was really crazy complicated. And here are some ideas for how this could be attached to the body and how it could be linked together. And this is actually the first prototype that I built. And this is really very simple and crude. It was just to see if I can actually move the sail at all with some servos. And now we have to wait for a second for the video to load. You're having some issue here. Okay, here it is. So this is the first version, and as it's playing, you can see this barely moves. Just the tip is moving, but you'll see my face and how happy I am that it just budged. I'm like, yeah, it's doing something, and I'm like, yeah, happy, even though it barely moves. But that gave me the hype that actually this idea, this might work, but it just requires a lot of experiments. And that's when I decided to design a better control box, because that part with servos that I was holding in my hand was pretty bad. It was like, okay, let's try to redesign it. And so there's space for Arduino and the batteries and everything, and the servos are properly attached in a bit of a different setup. They're also much stronger. And here are the first attempts with this new design of the control box. So you see this is like really much more complicated. There's like some foam and also the fur. And the servos we used are 30 kilos per centimeter. That's actually enough to break your finger if you're very careless. And a friend of mine, the one that I built the long prototype that I showed at the beginning, she's testing it. And you see it's barely moving. It's really bad. And this was overcomplicated. But I was like, okay, we're not giving up. This is actually going forward. So let's continue working on this. So back to drawing, and then I was like, okay, we have to make it better, right? So I decided to build a scale model, and that's the first thing I should have done. But I didn't think about it. I just didn't have experience with this kind of projects. And this is exactly what I did here. I built just a scale model of the mechanics, and I'm actuating the scale model with my hands, with the pulleys, which are made of nylon. And we have a problem again with the video loading. Okay, here it is. You see the motion now, it's much smoother, and also it's much more controllable. I actually wanted to build a tail that curls up. And I decided to use a hydraulic hose, which is reinforced with steel, and that means that it's flexible to the sides and up and down, but it doesn't twist, which means when you curl the tail all the way up, it doesn't fall over to the side. And here I am actually testing this on my body. And there's again some problem with the videos. All right, here it is. So here you can see this is controlled without the joystick, actually. It has a motion sensor, and as I move, I can actually curl it up and down. The lateral motion doesn't work that well, unfortunately, and then the motion itself is pretty unnatural. It looks like from those old movies, like from 50s or 60s when they first tried animatronics. but I am actively working on this. And here you see this concept just with my hand, how it's actuated. Moves up and down nicely. And this is how I redesigned it. I was like, okay, the Arduino was a mess for what I wanted to achieve, because I had to resolder it so many times. It was way too, the housing was way too small, and that led to a lot of issues. So I redesigned a new one, which is now much more sleek. It's possible to hide this or conceal it under your clothing or fursuit, so nobody will see this control box actually. And it has a lithium-ion battery here and custom-made electronics that a friend of mine helped design. And yeah, here it is. This has a ESP32 microcontroller, which means it has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. You can connect a generic Bluetooth joystick or even Xbox controller to it and control it with that. But it also has here a nice extension panel for motion sensor. And the mechanics themselves, they were also redesigned. This is for the much longer version. And that's what I gathered after the scale model that I built before. I was like, okay, it has to be much lighter. I have to reconsider how those vertebrae are connected. And then I can actually have a control over the range of motion. And you can see here, it's actually tied. And that means that only until this point, the tail is being actuated to the left and right. And here, this segment is practically, it's rigid. It's just linked together, but it doesn't move. So it means that the tail, it will not curl up. It will actually always stay in this nice straight position when you move it. And that's how it works when you control it with the joystick. There's, again, a bit of an issue with the video, but hopefully it'll play in a moment. Try to. All right, there it is. And you also see those servos moving here. The lid is actually removed. And you see that the range of motion is now much, much higher than the previous prototypes. So much, actually, that you could hurt someone if you hit them in the face or something. Be careful with that. But fortunately, with fur, it's much safer. So yeah, with all that, I really learned quite a few things. One is that communities are so important. That's something I was never appreciating so much, but lately, especially with this project, I learned how much support you can get from people and how much you can also give back. And I think this is really awesome. And then the other thing was that I should really know the needs of people, of my customers, because I had some ideas like to have a phone app for it and have like many features that many people wouldn't really want. What people would want, from what I gathered from some polls and asking people around, would be ideally a tail that doesn't even require a joystick to be controlled. Ideally, this could have either some presets or just follow your body, which is actually pretty hard to do, but it's doable. So yeah, there is no point in engineering something that nobody wants. And also it is that what I want is usually not what others want, unfortunately, or fortunately, because you learn this way. And then it's also not to jump to conclusions too early. So if you were listening closely, you might recall that I didn't build the scale model until like the second prototype. And if I build the scale model, that would save me a lot of time, because I would understand better where the actual issues are. And those issues, they were not in the servos or the control box. They were in the mechanical design itself. So this is my biggest nemesis. I love jumping to conclusions, and being also a scientist, that's something you have to unlearn. Don't jump to conclusions too early. Always take your time, do everything step by step, and note it down, and observe. Then it's not to rush with building an upgrade over a faulty design. That is the phone build that I presented to you. And that also, it's not always possible to calculate everything. This project, I was trying to actually calculate it on paper and do some simulations. It was too hard, really. Like building scale models was in this case at least, it was much easier. So yeah, that goes to this point again. Build scale models that can save you a lot of frustration and money. And keep it simple. Organize everything. That's why you were designed the control box. Really, it's really important to do that. And then that you can never achieve perfection. I wanted a perfect joystick. I wanted, a perfect range of motion. But you could see, like, I was already smiling. I was so happy to see that it's working anyhow. It wasn't perfect. It was actually terrible, but I was happy that it's making progress, and that's what matters the most. That you can enjoy it and that you can make gradual progress. You don't judge yourself. You're not too hard on yourself. You just enjoy it and do it step by step. And yeah, basically, nobody has ever achieved something in one day like this and became great at something. It always takes time. And yeah, I think this is actually one of the most important lessons there here, this project. So I would really want to thank you for your attention. You can follow me on Twitter at TailsMax, and also talk to me directly on Telegram at this funny name, Ethers. And now this will be the part of the questions and answers. If you have any questions, I'll be more than glad to show you around my workshop, or actually partly also my apartment. Yeah, you can see everything here, and tell you a bit more how it was built, and even lightly about detail. So now, yeah, if we have any questions, I'll be willing to answer them.
Yes, we have some questions here. How dangerous is that tail when it's flailing around?
So I could actually show you the tail. If it's flailing around, it's not very dangerous when it has a fur attached to it. And the tail is actually sitting nicely prepared here. Not sure how well you can see it. I can try to get some preview on my face, I think. How's that? Here it is. All right. Yeah.
Yeah, the stream has quite a horrible frame rate right now, so you might have to hold the phone still for a little while to get a good focus.
Right. So that would be the tail.
Yep.
And I can also show you how the tail moves. I can try to reposition my phone here. This carefully designed contraption.
I also got some questions about the servos, how much noise they make, which is always the trade-off in this game.
This is a great question. And that's actually what I would like to show you. Because now it's way quieter. I have to put it on, so this might take a moment because it's a bit awkward and tricky to attach. I can how loud or how quiet actually.
Oh yeah, how many prototypes? What prototype is this in order?
So this what I'm wearing right now. This is, I believe, the 5th or 6th prototype. Is it actually visible, the tail, right now? Can you see it?
Well, it's behind you, so you need to turn to the side. Yep.
Like so?
Yep.
And this is actually how loud it is. It's not loud at all. As I'm talking right now, you probably cannot hear much of the tail. It's practically silent. During a loud phone, this is basically what it does. It makes almost no noise. With the new servos, this is way better than it used to be, and actually it took. I think I spent in total like 300 euros or maybe 200 something on servos. And after I tested like 10 different models, I finally got one, which is very cheap and it's great. And that's what I have now. So I don't remember the exact name of the model right now, but if you follow me on Twitter, I actually announced it somewhere in one of my posts. But yeah, also feel free to ask me on Telegram. I can give you the exact model of the servos.
I honestly didn't catch if you mentioned that this project is open source, and
yeah,
so you share your findings and the servos you use and everything.
Yes, there are really no secrets when it comes to how it's built or designed. One thing is that I am pretty lazy and I still haven't documented this project fully. So once I'm there, I'll probably publish this on GitHub, and this will include both the electronics. So like the I'm actually not sure about the PCB because this is a collaboration with a friend of mine, and he might not be very happy about sharing the PCB. But when it comes to the mechanical design and also how to do it with Arduino, by all means, this will be definitely published. It will be made available very soon.
So, don't know if there's any direct questions I have. Anything else you want to tell about the project?
So, yeah, what else I can tell? I can also show you around, like maybe if you want to see how this was made, really, like what tools were being used. I can also show you a bit of like the workshop and some other projects that were made. This is sort of like Hall of Monuments, like weird projects that were built in the past. For example, this is a robotic duck.
Yeah, I get the question here about the PID controllers and smoothness of motion and so on. What
right.
What do you use for that? How advanced control mechanisms do you have?
It's actually the control is extremely simple. This is not even a case. This what you see here. This is actually a low pass filter. That's it. It's just a low pass, nothing more. That smooths the motion of the joystick. I actually wanted to have a perfectly precise joystick because those Chinese joysticks are quite noisy. I mean, the output from them is very noisy. But it was just enough to have a low pass filter in that. That's it. No big science. Right. So also a little sneak peek into the workshop. This is basically the working area. And yeah, it has an oscilloscope. There's also another project I'm working on right now, a good and strong lamp. And what else? Yeah, there are like those, you can see those cabinets. There are lots of tools inside. Actually, not in this one, but for example here. Also some cabinets here. And there are 2 3D printers that were invaluable working on this design.
Yeah, you can talk a little bit slower and closer to the microphone.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. So also this is one of the 3D printers. This printer is actually built to print really fast. It's Ender-free, or well, it looks like Ender-free, but it's not really that. The first striking difference is the hot end of this printer. This hot end can support 1.2 millimeter nozzles, and that means that it can print those vertebrae and those housings really fast. But the other quite nice side effect is that those prints are way stronger because of how thick the nozzle is. And what I'm using for printing is PETG. This material has proven to be one of the strongest materials that print fairly easily. Yeah, and actually so well that with these large nozzles, for the tail I use 0.8 millimeter actually. But with those large nozzles and a lot of heat, the PETG, it crystallizes, which means that when you break those prints, they don't break along layer lines. They actually break, they crack like glass almost. And that's great because it means it's really strong and the layers are fused together quite well. And there's also another printer. And that printer is a nightmare and I really dislike it. I wanted to get myself a resin printer and I was like, yeah, I'll get myself a huge resin printer. That's the printer. I really don't like it. It's more troubles. So far, I had more troubles with this printer than successful prints. So maybe I'll learn, but it's been like 1 or 2 months and of learning. And no, I think the resin printers, the small ones are actually easier to use. The larger you get with resin, the more problematic it becomes for many reasons. And yeah, I think that'll be it when it comes to the workshop and how it's built.
Excellent. And I think your time is starting to be filled also. If anyone wants to talk with Max anymore, we can set up a room for you and he can show more of his workshop if anyone is interested.
Was really an honor to have you here and to give this presentation. I really hope you enjoyed. And yeah, see you soon.
Yep, good luck with the tail. I hope it comes out to market soon.
Thank you.